How important do you think it is to maximize your podcast title and description SEO so that your searches, when people are searching specific topics or even your channel, will come more towards your content? And do you have any tips and tricks that you could offer our listeners for how to maximize your SEO for a podcast?
Certainly. So I think it's very, very important because especially if people are coming to find you, I've already mentioned that discovery is somewhat lacking on podcasting at large. If they can't find you when they type in the name of your show, even, then that's a serious problem. So it may have to do with like your show may sound fantastic, but if it's in like a super competitive field where there's hundreds of shows with like almost the exact same name, you're not really giving yourself much of an opportunity there to even be found. And so I think the way you can go about doing that is ensuring that your SEO principles are in place. This is something that even my show needs to improve upon, to be honest with you. But it is something that everybody should put a bit of time into. It's one of those things where it's like, if you're already going to have this show up and running, why wouldn't you have it packaged the best way to be found most frequently? So I think that's very important. And I think one thing is also typing your name of your show into Google and then also in the podcast apps and seeing if do people find you. And I think a lot of people will be surprised who are listening to this right now that you're not the first thing that comes up when people type in even your exact podcast name. For context, my show used to be called Project Passion. I typed that in and I would even find my own show when I typed in word for word my show. That's a problem. So that has partially to do with poor SEO at the time. And then also the fact that it's just a very competitive two-word combination. So I decided to change the name of my show. And since doing that, it's a little easier to find me now. And that's huge. And it has so much to do with friction. If someone is motivated to come see your show or listen to your show, they may be motivated to come see it. But if it requires more than they're expecting to have to commit to in terms of time and effort, every little step is another piece of friction. It makes it less likely that they actually get to you. So it's very important to make that as seamless as possible. And good SEO practices and making yourself easy to find is one of the easiest ways to do that when using the right strategies that you mentioned.
I think the rule when you build a website is you don't want anything to be more than 2 clicks away, even if it's getting back to the homepage. And something like that, for what you said, searching yourself on Google, searching yourself on YouTube, searching yourself on the podcast apps, and seeing what comes up can really be the difference between you growing an audience and you kind of just promoting to, friends and family and things like that small listenership that you develop, just kind of launching the podcast, so to speak. I think it's super important to really take advantage of SEO, and it's fairly simple to do for a lot of podcasters too. One thing that we recommend a lot from Amy Whitney specifically is that you can look at some of what your competitors are using in that market. Also, if you're typing in, for example, hockey, I'm just thinking of different things. If you type in hockey, for example, and your podcast doesn't come up, you may want to look at some of the other keywords that come up for that. Also, if hockey is such a grandiose term, maybe people are going to find other podcasts that maybe have a little bit of a higher listenership than your podcast. This is where you kind of talk about niche marketing, knowing your specific place within the overarching